All right, I'm thrilled to welcome Nick Francis, co-founder and CEO of Help Scout. Welcome to the Inside the Workflow podcast, Nick.
Thank you, Scott. Good to be with you.
Yeah, you too. So just beforehand, we were talking about some of the changes that we've made over the years, hairstyles, business changes. And I think you guys have always been a company that I've admired and frankly loved. You built the early business in Boston, and that's one of the places that's like closest to my heart. So I've always loved hearing about some of the work that you guys have done, especially as you have gone from building probably from what you considered early on, like a maybe single product to multi-product to platform. So I'm excited to talk to you today about a whole bunch of stuff. But one of the things I was curious about is, did you grow up in Boston then?
I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay.
Believe it or not. So that's where I met my co-founders, who I've been working with for over 20 years now. So how we got to Boston was we founded the company, started working on it in Nashville together, and we applied for TechStars, a startup accelerator, who was like, you know what, you should go to Boston. We went to Boston, spent 3 months sort of incubating the business, and we launched when we were in Boston, and we stayed there for another 7 years.
Wow. Okay. And then like, what was, the early vision of the product? Was it where you are now? Was it completely different? Did you even have like a fleshed out thing?
Yeah. Until recently, I don't think there's been any really big pivots in the business. And until ever, there's only been one real mission, which is to help customer support teams deliver a great customer experience. So that mission has been the same from day one. We started with a much more simplistic view of the problem, which is how can we make it so that teams can just share an email inbox and collaborate over communication with their customers without the customer having to deal with some ticket number, robotic email, like some system in the middle. Can we just like deliver that personal touch, but have all of the collaboration features on the back end that keep us from stepping on each other's toes? So it was a really simple view or narrow view of the problem initially, but the mission has always been help customer support teams deliver a great customer experience.
Okay, awesome. And can you tell me a little bit about, where these co-founders came from, how you found them, how you made sure that it was the right fit? I think that's kind of a scary thing for a lot of people, right?
It is a scary thing for a lot of people, and I'll be the first to tell you, Scott, that I've just been extremely blessed and lucky to have run into these guys. So funny story, my co-founder Jared and I waited tables together at a fancy restaurant in Nashville. All three of us have hospitality experience, and I do think that was somewhat formative in the way that we think about customer support. The first job that Jared ever did for me was an album cover. I started in the music business, believe it or not, because that's what people in Nashville do.
Yep.
But long story short, we started to build things for the web together and did so for about 6 years. So we just did consulting, the three of us. So Denny had a real job at the time, but we all started sort of side hustling, and then it became the main hustle that we were just building stuff for clients and consultants. And then ultimately, like our dream was to build a software business. The people we admired at that time were like Ben Chestnut at MailChimp and Jason and David at 37 Signals, and like all these incredible, cool, like bootstrappy companies who were really mission driven in the way that they operated the business and the way they built their product. And that was the dream for us, and still is. We're lucky that we've been living that dream for 14 years.
Yeah, it's a pretty incredible run, especially I think, to be honest, I'm so surprised, or not surprised. It's so often that I talk to CEOs and founders where they follow what seems like a very nonlinear path. I'm sure you wouldn't describe it as a linear path, but it sounds like what you set out to do, you have been doing, which is super interesting.
Yeah, no major pivots in that regard. I think we are in love with this problem. Like I could spend the rest of my life working on trying to solve this problem for some reason. I'm just obsessed with it. And so I think that's part of call that a benefit or a feature. I don't know, or a bug. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a benefit for sure. So maybe we could go back actually, to the hospitality role, the waiting tables. I would love to hear a little bit about, maybe how you feel like maybe you were always the kind of person who liked hospitality and enjoyed helping serve people and ensure they had a great experience, or you needed a job, and from that, role, you learned some of these skills. Mm-hmm. Which do you think it was? Was it sort of a match in heaven? You kind of developed these skill set?
I always have had an affinity for an experience, particularly with a brand of some sort. So, as a consumer, like from a very early age, I learned to code when I was very young because I was introduced to Apple computers. And, at that time, it was a very small percentage of the market, but I gained this affinity for this brand that just spoke to me in such a magical way, and sort of the experience it created, the philosophy and mission behind the brand. And so there's so many brands that I just became excited by, like how they made me feel. Right. And as an entrepreneur, I've been starting companies since I was 15. That's the only thing I really know how to do. I've always wanted to create businesses that create those sorts of experiences for people. I've always had this passion for brand and what that means to people, and trying to create something of meaning to people that goes beyond the pixels. But it's more of a philosophy and a mission that they can buy into, a value system that they can buy into. And so I mentioned I started in the music business. Like I was never a musician. I was always behind the scenes observing this incredible experience that the artists I got to work with were creating for people. And that was so magical to me. Being in a studio, creating an album, and like the sort of visceral experience that they're trying to cultivate for their audience, I just can't get enough. So I became obsessed with experiences of really any sort. It could be digital, it could be in person, but the ability for a brand to sort of create those sorts of magical experiences is really important to me. And customer support is one of those places in which, brand affinity is won or lost in those trenches. And so I'm like, man, if I could help all the small businesses in the world kind of solve for this and create a system that seemed aligned with their values, their customer-centric values, and gave them an opportunity to deliver outstanding world-class support to their customers, I will never tire of trying to solve that for people.
Okay, so it seems like a common thread here. You sort of mentioned not being tired, being obsessed. You could do it for the rest of your life. I love this and I admire it, and I think I'm definitely curious. Like, what is it that, aside from maybe just finding the right thing? I think every role, every job can be difficult and challenging. And some days you just don't want to do it. Is there like some mythical system you've developed to help yourself just, I don't know, continue? Is it sort of like there's like a set of, the movie American Psycho, where he has sort of his morning routine?
Yeah.
Have you had to develop your own American Psycho routine to just make sure you're inoculated against the pain just to keep going? Tell me about that.
The short answer is yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So tomorrow is Help Scout's 14th birthday.
Oh, awesome. And congratulations.
I can tell you for certain that at no point has it felt as though it got even like the slightest bit easier. Every day feels incredibly painful. I am any entrepreneur that's trying to build and grow a business is a glutton for punishment to some extent. And so what I'll say about that is I have developed tools that help me cope with the hard things that I'm trying to do. Because the motivation, as you may have been able to pick up on, is sort of boundless. Like I'm endlessly motivated to succeed and to win in this particular pursuit, but it is extremely painful along the way. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of really hard things that you have to contend with. And so I've just tried to find tools that help me sort of cope with that, manage that, and at the end of the day, embrace the famous Billie Jean quote that pressure's a privilege.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
At the end of the day, the hard things I'm doing in the grand scheme are not that hard relative to what other people have to face on a day-to-day basis. And so I feel incredibly privileged, and I try to remind myself of that on an ongoing basis, that, look, this might be hard, but this is a true privilege that I get to learn at this velocity, that I get to work with people that deeply inspire me, and that I get to make something that people care about.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I love that. Such a great way to position it. Another way maybe to think about this that I'm curious about too is I've talked to a lot of CEOs over the years, and one thing that they often highlight is that there are sort of like areas of genius or energy creating, like when they do work with product or engineering, or they go talk to customers, or they build brand, they just feel like that boundless energy kind of compounds and they can build the reservoir. You've talked a lot about brand, you've talked a lot about mission. So do you find those areas to be just really exciting for you? Are there certain areas of your business where you go into them and you come out a new, refreshed man?
There are certain aspects of the business where I feel as though I can add more value and I can bring a bit more vision and special sauce to the work. And whenever I get to be involved in shaping that work, it absolutely gets me excited. So all three of the founders at Help Scout are product people. We love to build. And so typically that for me is getting in a design review with a team that's building something and just trying to shape it together. That's the most fun for me. I also love spending time with customers. So every time I travel, I put together a customer breakfast in whatever city I'm in, and I try to gather together everybody that uses our product in that area and just like spend some time with them. And I tell you, that just fills my cup. Absolutely. So there's a number of different practices, typically around crafting the product and crafting that relationship with the customer that really gets me juiced. But frankly, there's a lot of things that get me juiced in this business. But the day-to-day grind of just trying to grow and grow and grow, and to try to build something that has significant market share in a world where we're like surrounded by competitors with like exponentially more resources. That can always feel like a grind.
I think though that it sounds like you have the one attribute that is hard to beat or to take away, which is that mission, boundless energy, desire to actually have an outcome for your customers, as opposed to like, I'm just in this for a few years, I want to make a paycheck or whatever, which is awesome. Like that's a moat that you can't get over.
Yeah, I recently heard an interview with Ben Chestnut that felt like I had a visceral reaction because I felt so seen by what he said. But he just said, entrepreneurship is not something that you should necessarily encourage. It's such a deeply like challenging and difficult thing. It's not something that he, for instance, wanted to do more than once. He did it once and he did everything he wanted to accomplish, and he decided to move on with his life. Like I see myself as the kind of long-term focused founder. If Help Scout didn't exist and I had to do this again, I would just do the same thing.
Right.
I just feel so fiercely committed to what we're trying to build together that this is probably the only thing I'll do.
Beautiful. Okay. One of the areas that I've seen you post a lot on LinkedIn over the years. I've met a bunch of your team members at conferences and meetups. You went from a team that sort of started, I guess, closer together. I'm not sure if it was entirely in the same office, but either way, over the years, I think you've expanded to being a fully remote team. And I think there's a great upside, and there's also some interesting aspects of that have to be challenging. But I'd love to hear a little bit about your sort of approach to building a great team and culture. I've met so many great people, and I'm always impressed and surprised. And I'd love to know how you were able to accomplish that.
Yeah, so we went through TechStars together as founders, right? And we always have been in the same geographic location. However, Jared decided to move back to Nashville after a couple of years in Boston. And so we had worked remotely previously. And so within 2 years, we were, really within 6 months, we were remote first from a hiring standpoint. So we decided, again, some of the companies that we absolutely admired at that time were already operating remote businesses. It was very niche, but there were companies who were doing remote successfully. And in an ecosystem like Boston, I looked around, there's HubSpot, TripAdvisor, like all these incredible companies all around us. I'm like, how the hell am I going to attract the sort of talent that we need to be successful? Like I think I'm going to have to use a different playbook. And so that ended up being sort of the decision tree, so to speak, was, hey, how can I attract the best talent? And in order to attract the best talent, I understand that there are a series of trade-offs that need to be made. So a lot of people talk about it in like terms of pros and cons. I just think they're trade-offs in terms of making remote work well from a cultural standpoint. And so we decided early on in the business to invest in understanding those trade-offs and then creating a culture that was meant to compensate for those trade-offs in meaningful ways that could create the sort of connection that anybody's looking for in a work environment, but at the same time, the sort of like flexibility and autonomy and being surrounded by like extraordinary talent all the time that remote can kind of give you. And so we were just willing to make those trade-offs. I'm happy to go into more detail about any specific aspects.
Well, I think one area that I'm interested in especially is like, I think there's a lot of techniques, tactics, principles of remote work, but like when it comes down to it, it's easy to escape into, the guy who works at home behind a computer, and it's hard to get to know you. So I think I would imagine you have to be a great communicator. You have to think about how to plan out either meeting up physically or doing some sort of team stuff. But like, I get the work part. That part is I feel like a little easier sometimes, but you have to build trust remotely. You have to build culture remotely. So that's an area that I'm interested in how you guys have done that. Are there certain things that you feel like have worked really well for you?
Yeah, so aside from, I think all remote first businesses do have to have an extremely strong written culture, meaning like everybody becomes a strong writer and learns to communicate with their teammates in writing very well. So we're incredibly engaged in Slack, as you can imagine. But we also spend a lot of time together, just like you and I are right now, face to face on a video chat. Even if we're doing work together, if we're pairing up, like there's a lot of in-person time, believe it or not, in our culture. And we try to design for that. Believe it or not, the call I was on just before this one was what we call a fika. It's a Swedish term for like basically grabbing coffee together. And I get randomly paired up with people in our company on a regular basis just to hang out. And just to kind of talk about what's going on in life, to sort of get off topic a little bit and just get to know the human being. So that's one of the trade-offs. So let's talk about both sides of the trade-off. One is that I can be highly productive because I get to sit in a room all by myself and just focus on the work for an 8-hour day. The trade-off is, hey, I'm not really feeling that sort of connection. I don't have any sort of spontaneous I don't run into anybody in the office. So you have to design for that connection, right? Like you have to optimize for creating those sorts of connections. And one way that we do it is just kind of randomly pair out people for fikas. We do an annual retreat, all hands. Everybody goes somewhere. Next month, we're going to Rome, Italy, to all be together for an entire week. And so you just have to make some really significant sort of investments in order to create connection, because it's not going to happen organically like it would in an office culture. So that's a bit what I mean with the trade-offs. Like you get high productivity, but you really have to work at creating connection.
And then maybe for you personally, I know you love to work and you love the mission. Do you ever leave your room? Are you there all the time? Like, tell me a little bit about like the CEO outside of the CEO room.
Yeah. So I have learned over the years that, I have to work at a sustainable pace and I have to optimize my time. I don't really work more than maybe, let's say, a 50-hour week on average, 50 to 55 hours. And I find a lot of different ways to sort of disconnect. As you can imagine, I'm addicted to hard things, so I like to do hard things outside of work as well, and sort of get into the adrenaline side of it.
So what's the adrenaline side? Are we talking about like base jumping and bungee, or what are we talking about?
I've tried a lot of stuff. The things that I'm most into right now that are hard things. So I've actually written about this before. I don't know if I've written publicly, but I do believe that doing hard things is like something that you can practice, and you can build up sort of a mentality and an excitement and a passion for like running at hard things. So for a while, for me, it was surfing. I live in Boulder, Colorado now, and so it's rock climbing. And my wife is like a much better rock climber than me, and so she just crushes me every week, and I love it. And I've always been super passionate about cars. And so I am out on a track somewhere as much as I can be, or I'm in a sim actually racing with some peers in that regard too. So learning the craft of driving fast is a really fun thing that I have a passion for.
Interesting. Very cool. I love the practice of doing hard things. My preferred, I don't know, outside is it's probably overly pragmatic. It's like what broke in my home or in my kids' lives or in my car. So I create, for example, like my minivan. I have 4 kids, so I gotta have a minivan. I'm a minivan guy. And the front of our whole hood, all of the paint came off. So I built a paint booth in my garage with PVC and plastic. Got a paint gun, dressed in a whole white suit like the guy from Breaking Bad.
Holy cow!
And learned how to do it. And it took me like all of 4th of July weekend or something like that. But it was so fun.
Incredible. Yeah, that's next level. I mean, yeah. I'm a big detailer. I love to do like detailing and stuff, but I haven't taken it that far. That's pretty amazing.
Oh, it's it's kind of like one of those things where you do the work and you can see all of your mistakes. And then at least my friends or my wife sees it and they're like, wow, that's incredible. And I'm like, it's hard to balance I don't know what you would call it, perfectionism, craftsmanship or whatever, but
yeah.
Anyway, love that you do that stuff.
And I think that if you look back on that experience, you probably say it was rewarding on a number of different levels going through that process, and that you would do it better the next time you try it. But that's the fun of the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of, I wouldn't say hard things, but there's new things that present challenges in, I think, every industry right now. Like AI is so exciting. And, there's AI agents, everybody's talking about agentic X, Y, and Z. In the customer support world, knowledge bases, et cetera, there's like so many opportunities to make your product better, easier, faster for your customers. So I'd love to hear a little bit about, how you guys view this new landscape, how it's in a positive way affecting your business, and what you're looking forward to doing with it.
Boy, yeah, that's been the story of my last couple of years, because it ultimately led to this moment where we felt like we were just founding the company again. It was kind of day one again. But I'll rewind first.
Cool.
I think it became pretty clear early on that customer support was at the tip of the spear with regard to large language models. And so when ChatGPT and large language models became a thing, I think a lot of the use cases that people would have on the tip of their tongue would be like, imagine the future of customer support with these tools in the mix. And so we pretty early on felt as though, wow, this market is going to get turned upside down. And all the assumptions that we've made for the last 12 years are out the window, and we have to make new assumptions. And that's a really exciting thing. I think we saw a lot of folks in the market, and we've been doing this with AI for so long, it's sort of predictable, but a lot of other companies in the market just went towards what we call like a deflection approach. It's like, great, you can use the tool to talk to your customers less and to push them away more and to put a bigger barrier between you and the customer so that you can improve your deflection rate. That's just not of interest whatsoever. That's why we never really built a Gen 1 chatbot, because we always felt like that was just a poor customer experience. But at the end of the day, we look at LLMs and the future of this kind of cycle of AI, and we say, wow, this is incredibly disruptive, and it has the potential to deliver much better customer experiences at the end of the day. That's why we're excited about it. As a tool, we can actually harness it for a lot of good in the world. A lot of other folks are talking about how AI first and how you can deflect more. That's great. We now have an opportunity to zag against that and say, nope, we're going to leverage it to do even better, to provide an even better experience. So it all came down to like, okay, what does that look like? For us, we had to kind of go back to first principles of the business and really question whether it made sense for us to continue with a seat-based business model. So that was the really hard thing for us. We saw as we continued to launch AI features and like make our product better, and as other things happened at the macro level, what we found is that our product kept getting better and our seats were going down. Making more customers were being helped through our product than ever, and we actually had fewer seats per customer served than we had ever had. And we surveyed the market and found that 78% of businesses said in the next 2 years they plan to either keep their customer support team flat or reduce headcount in light of the cycle that we're in. Everyone's expecting that AI will create more efficiencies on teams. I don't think that's specific to customer support, but we're certainly right in the sight line of how these efficiencies are going to come to bear. So we just had to think about the fundamentals of our business model, and we were sort of seeing them play out. And we said, well, what would be the best way for us to approach this? If we were founding the company today, what would we do? And the truth is we wouldn't charge per seat. we've had the luxury for 14 years now of having everybody in Help Scout. All of our employees, we practice whole company support. Everyone has support shifts. And we feel as though because everybody has access to the voice of the customer, that we collectively make better business decisions. Why can't we offer that same capability to our customers without taxing them for every seat? Would that be possible? So that's where we started. And then we said, well, look, if we're not charging per seat, then we actually don't have to charge for any of our AI features either. If we're charging based on usage, what we call a contact, then we can actually just include all AI. We can include unlimited seats and just charge for the people that you talk to. And so we charge for contacts today. So in November, we completely changed our business model. And a contact is basically an individual that you've helped. So you can have 10 conversations across multiple channels. That's still just one contact. And so on a monthly basis, we add up your contacts and say, this is what tier you're on. And you can have unlimited seats in AI kind of backing that process. And we feel as though that's a better way to do this. And it's going to be really hard for some of our competitors to make the same move. But in customer support, we just think per seat is no longer the right way to think about things. And that's not because seats are going up. That's not because like customer support teams are going to zero. Customer support teams are actually going to add more value than ever, because some of the tier one stuff goes away. But at the end of the day, it's not the right value metric. And that's why you see a lot of other folks in the space charge for seats, and then they charge for like 15 other add-ons as well. Because at the baseline, a user is not necessarily aligned with the value that the platform is delivering on an ongoing basis. So we just decided to make the really hard decision to reset that. And we're in the process of kind of navigating that transition now.
Amazing. That is such an incredible example of like, run to the hard thing.
Yeah.
You understand it, and then making that decision. I don't know about you, but I probably wouldn't have slept that night and like for a little while, because I would be so like, this is the right thing. I'm committed, but I'm sure nervous.
It was about 18 months. And then we finally launched in November of last year. So it was about 6 months ago. But it's been an extremely difficult thing, but at the same time, really rewarding to see people light up when they understand this like different approach and how it could impact their business in positive ways. And so I really, truly believe this is kind of the right approach. But I've been a student of Clay Christensen and The Innovator's Dilemma. I don't know if you've read that book, but it's so cool to actually just be part of the movie now, because this is a true innovator's dilemma. Like we're a 12-year-old company at the time. Like we're an incumbent. We've got this disruptive technology coming to market. Like what's the play in order for an incumbent to adjust to this disruptive technology and actually become a disruptor themselves? So I was really thinking about this through the principles and the framework of the innovator's dilemma, and that helped us build confidence in the decisions we were making.
Amazing. I think this goes back to earlier we were talking about the different hairstyles of Nick over the years. And I wonder, was the haircut change, it was sort of around that time?
It was the same month we launched the new face.
Amazing. Okay. It's like old Nick, new Nick. I love it.
Yeah. So I wrote a note to the team. I just said, look, it's day one of the business again. So I'm going back to exactly how I looked day one of the business.
Oh, that's amazing. With respect to, how you've made these changes with your customers, I guess sort of maybe a slightly broader question that I'm curious about is like, you talk with your customers, these customer breakfasts, which is a terrific idea. Presumably you read lots of feedback, you guys do surveys, all these kinds of things, but how do you make sure you're building the right product? I know there's sort of like that Henry Ford approach. Like if I had asked them, they would just tell me, faster horses. Steve Jobs kind of all envision it. What's your approach to building a great product?
Well, I do believe that those visionaries have a point. It's really important for you the way I explain it to the team is it's critically important to have a deep understanding of the problem space. As it pertains to the solution, I'm not so worried about it. Like there's ways to test and validate solutions, but I'm not, when I talk to a customer, I'm not actually looking for them to tell me how to build something. I'm looking for them to tell me what they're struggling with.
Right.
And so you really have to, as a product person, just remain fully focused on understanding the problem and every angle at that problem, and what the customer is facing. And then like the solution space is all where you can be like super visionary and innovative and actually just get in this creative space where you don't really, because customers are going to think in an incremental way, but a product team that understands a problem inside and out can think in a visionary way. That's 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. So that's the way that we like to think of it. At no point did Steve Jobs or Henry Ford or any other visionary think that customer feedback didn't matter. They just cared more about the problem space than the solution space as it pertains to the customer feedback. So I really try to look at it through that lens. And anytime somebody's like, well, you just need to move this button over here, I don't care. What I want to understand is why. Tell me why that would be better for you so that I can better understand the problem space.
Yeah, it seems right. I think that's it's sort of part of that reframe, rethink, and kind of ask people a slightly more challenging. It's certainly really easy to just say, "All right, guys, I did some custom interviews. The button's in the wrong place. Let's move the button. Great, we're done." And then nothing happens, right?
Right. Well, sometimes we have to check that too. I think it's really important, for us, at least, especially early on, it was so important to just use our own product every day. And so what I love is that we're one of the heaviest users of our own product. And so a lot of things that we build start with our own team. We ship it to our own team and get their feedback on how it's showing up. And so I do think we have this collective instinct that's pretty strong as a business because we are the ICP. We are the ideal customer. We are a heavy power user of our own product. And so that can put a little bit of blinders on, but like 98% of the time, it's a really helpful asset.
Have you guys over the years, maybe sort of going back to the ICP comment you made, but did you always target and support the sort of same size of companies and business in terms of employees? Has that shifted at all? And as a result, maybe those blinders for your, I don't know, presumably smaller cohorts, has shifted a bit?
From the beginning, we've wanted to lead the SMB segment of the market. When we looked at help desks, 14 years ago, they were all seemingly built for more enterprise-y use cases and more, I'll use the word again, like deflection-oriented use cases, treating customer support like a cost center instead of a growth opportunity, right? The most effective marketing channel. Like, what if you actually, that's not how I thought of customer support. I thought of customer support as like my most effective differentiator in the market, right? Like, it's a way to really juice the referral engine. And so I don't think we were the only ones that thought about customer support this way. We wanted to create a product that was sort of built around those values. And I think of those as small business values. I think of those as this is how small businesses like to operate. They're much more customer centric. And so we've always felt as though SMB is where we want to live. So we think of that as up to 500 employees. We like to say that we win in the 1 to 100 employee base, and then we just hang on for dear life. We're typically the first help desk or customer support platform somebody adopts. Sometimes it's time to graduate, and we've seen some incredible companies just graduate from us over the years. But for the most part, we're able to kind of hang on. But we really focus on that SMB use case because that's where the values fit. They love the simplicity and the ease of use of the product. And at the end of the day, we don't actually have to check as many boxes as our competitors because we're just solving a different use case that ends up being an advantage.
Yeah, I love that. It also, I think, is a great example of what we've talked about earlier, which is sort of this discipline in this area, this problem area that you're obsessed with. You want to do great, and you're not sort of necessarily compromising is probably the wrong word, but just sort of shifting based on, there's a whole lot of revenue over here. Let's just go chase it and let's change the whole thing. Like, that's really hard, right? Yeah. So one kind of final question for you, Nick. We've talked a little bit about your business, how you are 14 years in. What are you really excited about the next couple of years, whether it's your business, sort of like some of the projects you might be working on, some of these racing endeavors that you're getting into? Where are you most excited? Where are you finding the most energy?
I'm definitely most excited about the products that we're building right now. I just and how we're navigating and you're learning to use this new technology. So we're building stuff that I genuinely thought that would not be possible with science fiction 14 years ago. And now we get to like really do it. And so the access that we have to these extraordinary tools to kind of build experiences around is really exciting. So I love the space. I love that we have new ways to sort of solve this problem, because believe it or not, for 12 years, we were pretty much solving the problem with the same tools. And now we have all these new tools that we can play with. So it does feel like sort of a fresh start. With the business model, it feels like a fresh start. We have like 4 or 5 months of data, whereas we're used to having many years of data that we could look at. So even from a data orientation lens, it feels like we're back to square one, but that's in an exciting way, because at the end of the day, it really enables us to create a better, more innovative product. I'm so excited about some of the things that we're building and how they're going to impact businesses in the future. So game on, let's go.
Awesome. Well, Nick, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Scott.